He realized that to truly see the future, he had to walk to the bottom of the ocean, even if it meant he couldn't breathe. Now, this isn't just some poetic line. For one man, it was a literal, life-threatening philosophy. It was a choice to actually suffocate in public just to prove that the deepest, most terrifying parts of our minds hold the keys to genius. So, let's get into it. Today, we're unpacking one of the most eccentric and, well, brilliant minds of the 20th century, Salvador Dalí. But we're not just going to look at melting clocks. No, we are decoding his system, what we're calling the Dalí Equation, to understand how he turned what the world saw as total madness into a repeatable, powerful method for creation. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the moment he almost died, just to make a point. Then we'll rewind to the ghosts that haunted his childhood. We'll decode his philosophy on why mistakes are amazing, explore his bizarre daily habits for literally harvesting ideas, see how he built a global brand out of it, and then finally, we'll turn that equation on you. Okay, let's start where his public myth was truly born, on a stage, in a moment of pure, terrifying performance art that was, well, it was dangerously real. I want you to just picture this. It's London, 1936, at the International Surrealist Exhibition. Salvador Dalí walks on stage to give a lecture. But he's not in a suit and tie. He is fully encased in an old-school, heavy brass diving suit, helmet and all. At first, the audience is chuckling. It's just classic, weird Dalí. But then, as he starts to speak, his voice is just this muffled garble. He starts waving his arms around and his movements get more and more frantic. The laughter in the crowd kind of dies down, and it gets really quiet and really uncomfortable. He's not performing anymore. He's suffocating. This isn't a stunt. It is a physical metaphor. So what on earth was the point of all that drama? Well, Dalí was literally showing everyone his core philosophy, something he called the paranoiac critical method. Okay, put simply, it's a system for taking your wildest, most irrational thoughts and treating them with the dead seriousness of a scientist. The paranoiac part, that was about diving deep and accessing those fears and visions. The critical part, that was having the discipline and the skill to capture them, analyze them, and turn them into art. He was weaponizing his own psychology. But where did this need to explore the depths even come from? To understand the method, you have to understand the man. And to understand Dalí, we have to go back to his childhood, which was haunted by a ghost who had the exact same name. You see, before Salvador Dalí, the artist, there was another Salvador Dalí, his older brother, who died just months before our Dalí was born. In their grief, his parents gave their new son the very same name. They even took young Salvatore when he was just a little kid to his brother's grave and told him, straight up, that he was a reincarnation, a replacement for the perfect son they had lost. Can you just imagine the psychological weight of that? Living every single day knowing you are version 2.0, a substitute for this idealized ghost you can never meet, but you always have to live up to. This created a battle inside him that defined his entire life. On one side, you've got the memory of the original Salvador, this perfect, angelic child who could do no wrong because, well, he wasn't alive. And on the other side, you have the replacement Salvador. This poor kid was basically forced into a permanent state of performance. He had to be louder, stranger, more brilliant, not because he was arrogant, but because he was desperately trying to prove that he even existed. Every weird act, every defiant outburst, was him just screaming, "I am here, I am real, I am not him." So his solution was to make a conscious choice. If the world was going to see him as an echo, then fine. He would become the loudest, most unforgettable noise you could possibly imagine. He knew he couldn't compete with the ghost of a perfect, normal kid, so he just rejected the whole idea of normal. He built this fortress of mythology around himself, getting kicked out of art schools, not because he wasn't talented, but because he'd announced that none of his teachers were good enough to even critique him. He learned that defiance was his tool for carving out his own identity. But this crazy identity crisis didn't lead to a breakdown. Nope. Instead, it forged a revolutionary philosophy that would completely change the art world forever. This is one of his most famous quotes, and it is the key to absolutely everything. What he meant was this: a madman is a slave to his own irrational thoughts. He's drowning in the ocean of his subconscious. Dalí, on the other hand, saw himself as a master diver. He wasn't mad because he was in control. He chose when to dive, how deep to go, and most importantly, he had a system for bringing back whatever treasures he found down there. This is the philosophy of rationalized madness. And from this, he created a new rule for his life and his art. Mistakes, slips of the tongue, weird dreams, seeing things that aren't there, these were not errors to be fixed. For Dalí, they were sacred. They were unfiltered messages from the subconscious, secret doorways to a deeper reality that your logical brain could never get to. So while other artists were chasing perfection, Dalí was hunting for the perfect imperfection, that beautiful mistake that revealed a hidden truth. So let's break this down. First, he literally trained himself to see double images, to look at a rock and see a face, or look at a phone and imagine a lobster. It was all about actively looking for those irrational links. Second, he rejected good taste. He called it a creative handicap, because good taste keeps you safe. It keeps you predictable and boring. He wanted to be dangerous. And finally, and this is the real kicker, he combined these wild ideas with the hyper-realistic technical skill of the old masters, like Vermeer. Why? To make his insane visions look like undeniable facts. I mean, a melting clock is a weird idea, but when you paint it with the precision of a photograph, it becomes terrifyingly real. Okay, this all sounds great as a philosophy, right? But how did he actually do it? This is where we move from the abstract to the concrete, to the daily rituals he used to systematically mine his own mind for gold. Dalí didn't sit around and wait for inspiration to strike. No way. He hunted it down with a system he called hypnagogic capture. Now, the hypnagogic state is that magical, fleeting moment right as you're falling asleep when your logical brain logs off and all these bizarre images start to float up. Most of us just drift right through it. Dalí built a machine to catch those images. So here's how his most famous technique worked. He'd sit in a comfy chair, holding a heavy metal key, and he'd dangle it over a plate on the floor. He would let his mind just drift off into that dreamlike state, and just as he lost consciousness, his fingers would relax. The key falls. The sudden, sharp clatter of metal on ceramic jolts him awake. And in that split second, he grabs his notebook and captures the fleeting, irrational image from his mind before it disappears. He did this all the time. It was discipline, not just dreaming. His other main habit was something called the paranoid gaze. He would literally sit and stare at a single object, a loaf of bread, a crack in the wall, anything, for a super long time, actively willing his mind to see something else. He was forcing his brain to make new connections, to project his subconscious onto the real world until that object transformed. It was an act of willed hallucination, a systematic way to create those double images that became the hallmark of his work. So what was the result of all this? This combination of deep psychological trauma, a radical philosophy, and these bizarre daily habits, it led to a total transformation, not just of his art, but of what an artist could even be. You can trace his whole journey right here. He starts as the replacement son, just a boy struggling to even have an identity. He becomes the art school rebel, using defiance to create space for himself. This evolves into the master of surrealism, where he perfects his craft. But his final evolution, that's the most important one. He became the first global artist brand, a figure as famous as his paintings, recognized by his mustache alone. And that is the ultimate lesson from his career. His most enduring masterpiece wasn't a painting. It was Salvador Dalí. He meticulously crafted his public persona, turning his entire life into one continuous performance. He proved that the artist's identity itself could be a work of art. In our modern world of personal branding and influencer culture, Dalí was the blueprint. He showed that you are just as much a work of art as the work you produce. So, this brings us to the final and honestly the most important part. Why does the story of a surrealist painter from 100 years ago matter to you right now? Let's turn Dalí's equation inward. The lesson from Dalí is huge. That thing about you that feels weird or different or maybe even a little mad, your unique perspective, your strange hobbies, that unconventional way you connect ideas, that is not a weakness. It is your single greatest source of power. It's your competitive advantage in a world that pushes everyone to be the same. But, and this is the key, that madness is only powerful if you give it a method. You have to build a system to harness it, just like Dalí did with his key and his paranoid gaze. So I want to leave you with this question, and I want you to think about it honestly. What is your sacred mistake? What's that weird idea you've been pushing down because it feels too strange? That unconventional approach you've been afraid to try at work or in your creative life? How can you stop hiding it and start building a system around it? How can you turn your unique way of seeing into your unique way of doing? Because in the end, Dalí's equation teaches us this. Madness is just a tool. It's raw material like clay or paint. It's available to everyone. But your method, your personal, disciplined system for shaping that raw material, that is the unique code for your genius. The only difference between chaos and creation is a method. Go find yours.